over limit freeze. Objective confirmed.
So ridiculous. Oh my goodness. Yo, what's going on YouTube? Smollzy here with another build guide for you. This one revolving around Hailey. She's got some pretty thick assets, and let me just say that her damage matches. So let's hop in the mods real quick and let's take a look. Now let me just start by saying I personally am not a fan of sniping, that kind of gameplay. I'm not a big fan of Sharon's kit. Not that I think she's bad. She just doesn't have my type of gameplay style. But Hailey does some damage. Hailey hits hard. She's got some really cool flashy abilities that really make her stand out as a sniper character. So let's jump into the build and see what's going on. So before I show it in action, let's take a look at our abilities. Your first ability is called Cryo Round. What this does is has like a little drone attached to your back. When you press your skill, you're gonna fire cryo rounds as it shows in the image. I guess kind of like a little machine gun, you would say. It'll shoot 9 shots. 9 monsters is what it can hit. If there's a singular target, then all 9 of those are going to be on the singular target. Her second ability is called Storm Snare. By far my personal favorite ability. Really cool. As you can see in the image, she pulls out this massive gun, does a massive AoE beam. This has a vortex when you first pull out the weapon. So if there's any ads around you, they're just going to be like staggered. They're going to get hit with some chill and slow it down. And then you'll proceed to charge up the weapon and then fire it. It's an ability that just feels really cool to use. Her third ability is called Cold Fury. What this does is it'll start stacking over time. And what those stacks are doing is they're increasing your skill crit rate and your gun's crit rate, as well as your firearm penetration. And then lastly, her fourth ability, her ult, it's called Zenith. Skill description is you equip unique weapon. When hitting an enemy with the unique weapon, greatly increases penetration and firearm attack and deals additional chill skill damage. This will recover a portion of MP upon successful attacking weak points, and then partially decreases the skill cooldown of the unique weapon skill when the skill ends. That's going to be dependent on how many bullets you've used. So the more bullets you use, the higher your cooldown. The less bullets you use, the faster you're going to have your gun back. And then her passive, it's called Safe Strategic Retreat. Proportional to the distance between target and Hailey, weak point damage decreases the closer it is to the target and increases the further it is, right? So ideally you need to be at 25 meters or more so that you get your 50% weak point damage increase. Any closer than 25, you're not going to get the 50%. It'll just slowly start declining, right? So she really does want you to stay at a distance. So this is what your skill rotation would look like when you go into a colossal boss fight, right? You're going to pop your 3 so you can start building these stacks on the left of the character. This is increasing your skill crit rate and your gun crit rate. It'll max out at 16. When you're at the max stacks, you would pull out your gun, press your 1 ability so that you can get an increased damage bonus, and then you would start hitting the weak points on the enemy, right? You want to try to get off all of your shots. I know I'm dodged and missed all of those shots, but you want to try to get all of your shots off onto the target before you run out of mana, right? As you can see, I'm slowly draining mana with this build. It is built really well so that we can maintain that mana. I will say that with no mods or anything to help offset that mana, she does suck down a lot of mana. And based on the size of these hips, I kind of think I know where that MP is going. Now, I want to touch on her first ability again really quick. Do not forget to use this when you're in a fight. The reason is because when you do use this on a Colossi, right, you're going to get those 9 stacks of cryo, and you're going to get an additional damage increase of 50%. It is worth noting that every time you hit the enemy that has the stacks, they will start losing a stack per hit. And while we're talking about her first ability, Cryo Round, it is worth noting that the distance on this seems to be at a max of 38 meters. If you don't know, when you're using a sniper, on the right side of the scope, you can see how many meters we are. We're at 38 exactly right now, and if I use her 1, we can hit. Cooldown comes pretty quick, and then I just step back 1 meter to 39, and there is no target available. But I did think that this is a good ability to touch on again, to remind people that this actually is a really good tool to use before you use your 4, before you pull out your big gun, so you can get that extra damage. Something else to mention is that you can use 2 of your abilities when you're in your gun state. You can use your 1, right, to apply the stacks, and then you can also use your 3 so that you can build your crit rate. You can also turn that off while you're in your gun state. The one ability you cannot use while in here is going to be your second ability, your other gun. You do need to drop this gun before you decide to pick this gun up.
One shot.
That's just such a cool ability. So for our mods, we have skill concentration, increased HP, skill simplification, front lines, increased defense, maximize conservation, spear and shield, chill master, MP conversion, and skill insight. And as far as our external components, I went with the Slayer set. The reason I went with the Slayer set is really just because of the skill power bonus of 26%, and rounds per mag is cool. But really the main reason is because I want to get the skill power bonus of 26%. And so with the 2-piece, you get general rounds capacity plus 8%. And then with the 4-piece, you get rounds per magazine 9%. Your skill cost does go up by 15%, but your skill power also goes up 26.1%. And then the last part doesn't really apply to us. It just says when defeating enemies inflicted with Toad, recovers MP and specialized resource 12% at a 17% chance. Not really going to apply to us with Hailey, but we again just want the extra skill damage. And as far as our rolls on these, I did change some things up compared to previous builds. Typically with my builds, for the rolls, I usually go with one build specific roll and then an element resistance. For example, on this piece, I would usually have max HP with fire resistance, but Hailey is a mana sucker. She just devours all of your mana very quickly without having anything to offset that. So if we look through the rolls for our auxiliary power, we have MP recovery out of combat, max HP, MP recovery in combat, max MP, and then defense, electric resistance, and max shield and toxin resistance. Another reason I went with MP rolls on my auxiliaries is because the 4 set bonus has skill cost plus 15%, right? So we're going to be using 15% more mana. And so to offset that mana consumption and her base mana consumption, I do find that it is really, really helpful to use the MP recovery rolls that you can get, such as MP recovery out of combat and MP recovery in combat, as well as max MP. The reactor we're using is not ultimate. It's a sore in our eyes. I know. Don't really have a choice at the moment. At the time that I recorded this video, there isn't a farm. I think it's 2 days away. And the only difference is going to happen to this build is it's just going to do more damage, right? With an improved reactor, ultimate version reactor. This is still a really good reactor. You saw the damage I did earlier in the video. I'm using this one because it's really my only option. I have a sniper rifle class equipped as the optimization condition. Fantastic, chill, and singular boost ratios. And then my rolls on the bottom are garbage. I'm not going to lie to you. They are not the best rolls, but I really don't have a choice right now until the new farm comes through. What I would suggest is getting an ultimate roll with either the piercing light or the afterglow as your optimization condition. You're still going to have the chill skill power boost ratio and the singular skill power boost ratio on your reactor. As of right now with this build, we are at 100% skill crit rate and 100% gun crit rate. Some of the possible rolls that you would want to see on a ultimate reactor with afterglow or piercing light as your optimization condition. Some of the rolls you would want to see on the bottom would be like skill crit damage, damage to Colossus, skill cooldown. Any of these are going to benefit you. But when our farm does come around and I am able to get what I think is going to be a god tier reactor roll, I will update the guide to let you know if anything changes and also to let you know exactly what kind of reactor I decided to go with. So if we look down here at our stats, we have 34,589 defense, 1,268 shield, and 7,121 HP. Now the HP can be a little uncomfortable. The only thing that you could really change out that's not going to affect your damage would be MP conversion skill cooldown. If you do get cooldown on a reactor roll, that might be enough for you not to have to catalyze skill cooldown on your character. Another option for MP conversion and for skill cooldown would be time distribution. Your skill cooldown would then be 14%, but then you do get an extra 52% HP. So if you want something with a little more HP, this is an option. If you do decide to go with time distribution, that's going to bring your HP from what it previously was in the 7,000 range. It's going to bring it up to 8,293. If you are someone who wants even more HP, another option for HP is going to be Battle of Stamina with the skill duration bonus. Skill duration bonus would apply. It would only be about a second in your cryo and your 1, and it would bring your HP from 7,000 to 9,856. So there is even more HP if you're someone who just still needs a little more HP, then this is actually a really good choice to add a little bit more HP on there. If you want to go crazy with the HP and get even more HP, you can totally do that using Stim Accelerant. This is going to give you max HP increase of 234%, but it does hit the MP. And with this build, we've already kind of tore into the MP a bit. We are able to offset it and get it to minus 25%. But if you do decide to use this mod for even more HP, just know that your mana is going to take a pretty big hit and you're going to be at minus 40% MP. You might be able to stretch that out with some duration on your reactor roll, but it will bring your HP from 7,000, how we had on the original build, all the way up to 12,353. But personally, I kind of feel like the max MP hit of minus 15% is just a little too much for my comfortability. If you have a reactor laying around that has skill cost on it, you could try this mod with skill cost, see if it's comfortable for you. All right, and as far as your guns go, there's only 2 snipers in the game. They're both really good guns. They both hit really, really hard. And in my opinion, which sniper you do decide to go with is going to be personal preference. Maybe you already have the Afterglow. Maybe you already have Piercing Light. Either one is a really good option. They're both going to hit really, really hard. Testing the difference in base damage between the two, Piercing Light and Afterglow. Piercing Light had a higher base damage. Piercing Light was hitting for, on average, 357,000 damage, and the Afterglow on average was hitting for 220,000 without mods. So with Hailey's 4 on the right, if you can read this, it says exclusive weapon. Under that, it says base damage, and that is going to be same as equipped weapon. The reason I'm noting this is because your buffs on the Afterglow and on Piercing Light will not apply while you are in this state. That means that the unique abilities on both of these weapons, this does not apply when you are in her 4th. So it's strictly just base damage plus your skill power times 3,691.9. Both of them are going to be built very similarly, and they both hit like an absolute truck. When you're playing any other character rather than Hailey, you won't usually have the 100% crit rate because of Hailey's 3rd ability, which will give you with this build 100% crit rate on your gun and 100% crit rate on your skills. Another reason I use the Afterglow over Piercing Light is 2 reasons. This has a firearm crit rate of 50% as a base, whereas the Piercing Light's base is a 43%. Now, when you look at the abilities comparing Afterglow with Piercing Light, we'll look at the Piercing Light first. On hitting a weak point, inflicts Dispel on the enemy with a set chance. When 2 or more enemies are hit by a single shot, there's a high chance to land a critical hit on the enemies, while also increasing critical hit damage and applying this buff to the attack. So you get the buff Dispel. Dispel is going to give you a trigger rate of plus 50%. It's going to last for 1 second, and it will also remove a buff on the enemy that you have hit. And then upon piercing 2 or more targets, hence the name Piercing Light, firearm critical rate will then go to 100, and then your firearm critical hit damage will be 6%. And when looking at the Afterglow's ability, on hitting a weak point, inflicts the unique effect Death Propagation. On hitting an enemy commander or Colossus, increases firearm critical hit rate and applies the effect to the attack. So when we look at stats, Death Propagation, what that is a duration of 5 seconds, max stacks of 6, reload time modifier 2%, weak point damage 9%, reload time modifier per stack is 3%, and then weak point damage per stack is 3%. Then when you hit an enemy commander, you will get a firearm critical hit rate of 12%. And then on hitting a Colossus, firearm critical hit rate of 12%. So for me, when comparing the two abilities, this one is a little more specific. Like you need to have two enemies line up so that you can shoot them both to get the buff. But with the Afterglow and hitting a weak point, it'll inflict the unique effect death propagation, right? And we just went over that. So when comparing the two special abilities and what you have to do to get them to proc, Afterglow's unique ability just seems easier to proc. I don't have to wait for two enemies to line up to try to pierce them to get that buff. I just have to hit him in a weak point, and we can just continue hitting weak points. We just continue stacking this buff, and we just continue to do damage. So both phenomenal weapons, your choice on which one you go with. I did decide to go with the Afterglow. I have this one built. As far as the rolls on my Afterglow, I went with weak point damage, firearm attack, firearm critical hit damage, and bonus firearm attack. Usually I would want crit rate on here. I don't have crit rate because with the way we've built Hailey and her third ability, you were going to hit 100% skill crit rate and 100% gun crit rate. So when I pop her 3, right, we can go into our inventory, we can pull up our stats, and you can see it increase right here. As you see, our firearm critical hit rate, boom, is at max, and our skill crit rate is now at max. So both of these are maxed. No need to worry about crit rate on the gun if you're only going to use it for Hailey. Now let's hop into the gun's mods and we'll take a look. We have rifling reinforcement, weak point sight, action and reaction, better insight, expand weapon charge, better concentration, concentration priority, maximize weight balance, and special sight. And this slot, of course, came pre-catalyzed with an R. If you know why they're doing this, please let me know down in the comments below. Don't really see why we have an R on any of our guns. What I'm going to do is replace this though with a weak point damage, specifically focus fire. You'll get an extra weak point damage of 20% plus a firearm critical hit damage of plus 3.5% just to squeeze out some extra damage on the gun. You probably noticed earlier that I have 2 magazine mods on here. There is a reason for this. I don't normally put this on any of my guns, but with Hailey's 4, the amount of shots you have is based on those 2 mods, right? And so with those 2 mods, this will bring us to 7 shots in her 4. I do believe you could stretch that to 8, but I believe you're going to need like a complete god roll, like max roll on rounds per magazine on your gun. But with that, you're only rolling 1 perk, right? It's 20 currency to be able to roll that. And personally, I'm not rolling in it like that. I don't know what my RNG is going to be. If you want to try your luck with your RNG, see if you can get max roll, you can squeeze out 1 more shot, and that'll bring you from 7 shots on Hailey's 4 to 8 shots. And I know that my focus is on Afterglow. I've explained why I chose that one. I was going to build Piercing Light for Hailey. I'm going to build it the same exact way. The rolls would also be the same that I have on the Afterglow. And then the last mod that I want to touch on is Special Sight. This is a special mod. What it does is it's going to decrease your movement speed by 30%. Pretty bad, I know, but the weak point damage when increased is going to be plus 30%. The reason I'm finding the mod to be acceptable with this build is because Hailey's 4 specifically, you're not able to move with it anyway. So it's not going to make a difference whether you can move or not because you can't move anyway. You can't roll out of this. You can't do anything. And it only applies when you have the sniper out, right? So if you want the more increased movement speed, all you do is just swap your weapon and your increased movement speed is going to go back to normal. All right, and that's going to do it for this build video. Hope I was able to help you guys out with this Hailey guide. I know I'm really enjoying playing with her, surprisingly, even though like I said earlier, I don't really like sniper play. This descendant really brings out the sniper fantasy, and I've been just having some fun with it. I do stream almost every day on Twitch under the username Smollzy, and I hope to see you guys there. Until the next one, later.